Yeah, that will do the job. Hey guys, it's Eric from D&E The Garage. And this is now episode 3 of the Build a Barney. Jeep just won't die. Today's episode we're going to talk about cooling upgrades. And the reason why we're talking about that is because the last episode I showed you that I did the head gasket when I first got the Jeep. And that didn't solve all my overheating issues. So I decided that there must have been something else wrong with the system. Now I mentioned also that I replaced the thermostat, and that was fine also. So I started troubleshooting more. Sorry, I'm a lot of breath. The air conditioner was heavy. So I started troubleshooting my cooling system a little more. And to keep the story short, I ended up pulling the radiator out, and I wanted to do a bench flow. I wanted to get a lot of water and see the flow out, and I realized it was a lot lower than it should have been. So I popped it out, and I went and got a new one from Rock Auto. And when I did that, the new one showed up, and it was actually the towing version, which we'll get to in a second. And I lifted the two up next to each other, side by side, and the old one was at least 5 pounds heavier. I'm assuming that's built up sludge and basically junk inside the coolant that got around. I know when I first did the head gasket, I flushed the block, and then I flushed the radiator till it was clean, but I guess there was still stuff just built up I couldn't get out. So I ended up replacing the radiator, and that actually did solve my cooling problems. But as you know, Jeeps tend to run a little hot. I mean, this usually runs around, now it runs a lot lower, but when you get a Jeep, it's usually like 210, 220-ish. So I basically decided that was too hot for me. So I got the towing radiator, as I mentioned before. Now, when you go on rockauto.com, there's going to be at least 3 options usually. You're going to have your cheap run-of-the-mill basic radiator. Then you're going to have the premium OEM build spec, which is usually just whatever the factory has. And then you're going to have the towing radiator. The towing radiator is a 2-row radiator. There's 2 rows of cooling fins to cool the coolant for you. Now the thing is, there's a little deceiving in that. You can actually have a 1-row radiator that holds more coolant than a 2-row. Now there's a quick tip on buying radiators, is that there's 1-row, 2-row, 3-row, there's all these different types of radiators when you get into the performance world of radiators. The biggest thing is that you want to know how much liters it holds for coolant and how it flows air. It doesn't matter so much to 2 rows. I mean, 2 rows is great, don't get me wrong, it's going to cool more coolant, but if it doesn't hold as much as the 1 row you had, then you're actually cooling less coolant at the same time, if you understand what I'm saying. But neither here or there. The 2-row I got for the Jeep was the tow package factory one, which held more coolant and cooled things down quicker. I installed that, and beautiful. All my cooling problems went away. It's a nice, quick and easy upgrade you can do, and it dropped it from about, I guess, 210 to about 190s for temperature, if people are asking, and I loved it. I had no problems after that, pretty much. Then I noticed a little while after that, as I was having problems under load, like heavy load, the Jeep would just start heating up. And it wouldn't be too much. It would get like the 220 range, but it was enough that would make me concerned. I'd see wild swings. So I started investigating things, and I went through a couple different types of upgrades. I'm going to go into a video later on about the Taurus fan electric upgrade. I had that installed in this Jeep. They run about, what was it? I think it's 3,000 CFMs on the high capacity side for that. So they're a little less than a mech fan. Mech fans are at 4,500 CFMs. So it really doesn't pull as much air, and you'd have to run it more consistently. I just didn't personally, for me, like it. And we'll get into that whole didactic later in another video. But I ended up actually going with the HD clutch fan. Now I'll bring you over. You can see it down there, the shiny one. That is the new clutch I put on. Now the reason I put that new clutch fan on is actually because my old one was failing. A quick easy way to see if it's failing is just you pull it up and down like this, and you get almost no resistance. You get almost no resistance means that your clutch is no longer engaging to turn the fan, because that's directly connected to the water pump, but the resistance is the clutch grabbing on the turn of the water pump. Now, there's 3 versions of this this fan clutch. You have a normal, which is 60 to 70% engaged. Then you have the HD, which is, I believe, 70 to 80. And then you have the severe, which is 80 to 90% engaged. Now, what I mean engaged is that means while the motor's running, it engages 70% of the time, or it engages 80% of the time, or 90% of the time. Now, it doesn't engage at the full RPM of the motor. It engages about 20 to 30% lower than that. So you're not getting the full push of when you hit the throttle, but you're getting a substantial more power. When I installed the HD one, which is the medium range one, I noticed such a difference in cooling that I never had a problem again. This thing runs at a 185 on the dot spec to the thermostat. No problems at all. It was one of the best upgrades I did. I did a couple other grades we'll go through in a second, but that right there, hands down, I will replace the fan clutch in a heartbeat next time when I have a Jeep overheating. It was cheap. I think it was like $35, I think. I got off Rock Auto, or $37. Wasn't too bad. The install of the HD fan clutch wasn't that hard. What I had to do is, you see, some people remove the fan shroud. I've got my own little custom hack here. I'll bring you a little closer. I'm sure you guys saw this before, but if you look there, I had cut my fan shroud so it could take out the fan very easily. With that though, you need a flathead, and we've gone over this in a junkyard video, and a ratcheting wrench. I made my own custom ratcheting wrench. I actually grounded all the edges down on a normal ratcheting wrench so it was nice and thin. It can fit right for each bolt, and it's a 13 millimeter. Once you pop that off, it's another set of 13 to get the fan off and put it all back together in reverse. Real short and simple. But those are my highly recommended coolant upgrades, is the tow radiator and the mech fan. If I have 2 hands down, those are 100% worth it. They make other ones where you can hog out your thermostat housing. My buddy did that in his, and it cooled too much at that point, to be honest. I wouldn't mess with the flow as much when you really do radiators. I would really more pay attention to how much you're cooling your coolant system, because he hogged his out, and that thing ran at, I think it was like 160 all the time. It never got up to temp, so it was always running rich. I don't know if anyone knows, but when you run a colder motor, it actually stays in an open loop system, which basically means it's always adjusting the fuel ratios, and usually runs rich because it doesn't get up to an operating temperature that can actually fire the cylinders properly. So it's just dumping fuel. And Jeeps already run a little rich, so you don't really want to make it run too cold and then just keep it in a rich scenario. It's not a great idea. But yeah, those are my 2 hands downs upgrades for cooling your coolant. Now, I also did another thing for the trans cooler. I installed a factory ZJ trans cooler, and you can see right here. So you can see right there, that is the factory tow rating trans cooler. So basically, this truck got the towing upgrades overall. Now you can see my condenser is actually falling apart right now, and that's why I really did the AC delete. I wasn't really getting much cooling from that. So those are some cheap cooling tricks you can do to your ZJ or 4-liter to get them to run cold. For those XJ folks out there, you can do some similar upgrades for your cooling system. You can run a ZJ factory clutch, which is actually better than your XJ clutch. It engages more percent of the time, and if you run the fan blades from it, you actually will get better airflow. That's another area we really didn't talk about, is the fan blades are very important when trying to cool. And you can get upgraded ones. The factory ones work as long as you have a clutch that works. Some people overlook that during overheating problems. It's the clutch that usually is the problem. If you can't figure it out, make sure to pull that blade and make sure you can feel resistance. Also, for the XJ, you can get a towing radiator for that. With these upgrades that are cheap and simple, you can definitely improve the cooling you have on your truck. Trust me, they're worth it. They're not that much money, and I beat the crap out of this thing. This thing has towed too much weight that it shouldn't have. It has a plow on front of it during the winter time. It literally just gets abused all the time, and now I never have a problem with my cooling system. Like I said, I run the electrical fan upgrade, and we'll go through that video next or sometime soon. I don't think it's worth it. Some people say you lose power with these HD clutches and you gain power with electrical fans. Yes, I did see a little butt horsepower from when I took out my mech fan, but I didn't see anything really hinder me too much when I put the heavy duty mech fan clutch on. I do sound like a school bus going down the road, I'll say that much. These things are noisy, so prepare for that, but they're worth it 100%. So there's your quick, down and dirty way of upgrading your cooling system in your ZJ. You can run other aftermarket stuff, but trust me, if you do those two things I showed you, you won't need much more. I have no problems with driving this Jeep around and doing everything I do with it. So with that, I am Eric from D&E Garage. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, visit our Patreon site, get some swag from Teespring, and catch us later for the next episode of Build to Barney.